gonna get back into the topic of how racist the American judicial system is, and how we ourselves get sold a bill of goods in terms of our own behavior, and we're forced to accept the same thing that other people around us who don't know us accept. And this is that black people pretty much are bad, black men especially. We're animals, we're savages running around doing this and doing that, basically just making our whole race look bad. Now, as a person who has been through the system, has been pretty much a disgrace to our race, one thing that I did when I was leading a bad example, leading the kind of example that they used as an excuse to generalize all black men as a whole, the thing that I did in there, in my final, my final storm, so to speak, I decided that I was never coming back. And what I did was I studied everything around me as it related to how so many of us get there. Now, the other day I made a video talking about how once we get to prison, we become conditioned, starting with the juvenile system and graduating up to the federal system or the state system, wherever, whatever state we live in. But the thing that I learned while I was in prison was that the laws, being as racist as they are, is not a myth. A lot of people like to think that when we speak about this type of stuff, we're just shooting off the hip because we're bitter, or basically we want to yell and scream about something after we know we've done something wrong. But the truth of the matter is the laws actually are racist. Take, for instance, the drug laws. See, a lot of people fighting to get the drug laws straightened out. They are fighting a commendable battle, but they still don't know the details. You know what I'm saying? They know just enough to piss them off. But if they knew what I knew, they'd be even more pissed off. You know how many people I saw walking around me in prison? First-time offenders with enough drugs to fill up the palm of their hand. That's what they got caught with. Something they could squeeze in the palm of their hand. Doing 10, 15, and 20 years because of that. First-time offenders. Kids. I know guys in there personally who came in at like 17, 18 years old. And they're still there. Almost 40. For just a little bit of drugs. Conspiracies where they round up a whole gang of people, take the little bit of drugs that each person has, combine the drugs together to make that pile of drugs sound as if it's a whole lot, and then give them all a conspiracy with the intent of selling that large amount when they all just had a little pinch. This is the way that the system works. There was a time when if you got caught with crack cocaine, you would do 100 times greater a sentence than somebody who got caught with powder cocaine. Even though powder cocaine is the primary ingredient in crack cocaine. It's the only ingredient in crack cocaine that even matters, honestly. Because without the powder cocaine, crack cocaine itself is just garbage. Something to clean up around the house with. So let's get into some historical facts here. And I'm doing this considering the fact that they actually came back and said, okay, well, we're going to fix this. We're going to make it fair. Instead of you doing 100 times more of a sentence than somebody who has powder cocaine, if you get caught with crack cocaine, you're only going to do 18 times more the sentence that somebody with powder cocaine does. Is that justice? We call that, is that fairness? And it tripped me out because a lot of guys, bless their heart, man. You got to take whatever you can get. They was jumping for joy and slapping five and just walking around with their chest high now because they were going to only be doing 18 to 1 instead of 100 to 1 when neither is fair. One of them is just more grossly unfair than the other. That's the only difference. The only difference. When you look around that federal prison system, all you're going to see is black men locked up for drugs or something that has to do with drugs. You got a few bank robbers in there, such as myself. Now, when it comes down to doing things like, gun charges and things like that, you would think blacks were the only people in this country who had a gun. It just goes to show you what I saw in there for my own self is that those laws are put on the books strictly to come after us. It is a fact that when a black person does something wrong, you're going to jail. Unless you fit some type of extreme exception, you're going to jail. You poor and you black and you commit a crime, you are going to jail. Now, if you white and you commit a crime, you at least have the opportunity to get away with it. That's the difference between American law for blacks and American law for whites. Is when you black and you do wrong, you're most likely going to jail. But when you're white and you do wrong, you at least have the opportunity to beat it. The comfort that blacks don't have is knowing that we can walk into a courtroom or we can get arrested for something and there's a chance that, we won't be slammed for it. Whites actually have that comfort. I had a guy tell me to my face while I was in prison that he was arrested. He was basically there for parole violation. He had gotten into a bar fight. Now, look what happened. He gets into a bar fight, and because he was the aggressor of this fight, the people were pressing charges on him. So here comes the police. They come, they apprehend him, handcuff him. They discover that he's got a gun on him. Here you have a convicted felon in possession of a firearm. He's got a gun on him. Do they lock him up federally for that gun? No. You know what he told me they did? Sat him on the sidewalk, put his phone up to his head so that he can talk to his girlfriend and have her come and pick up that gun. So they called his girlfriend. She came up and picked up the gun since the gun was in her name. She came and picked this gun up, and he was taken off to jail and prosecuted as a parole violator for the fight that he had gotten into. The fact that he was a felon in possession of a firearm never even hit the books. And this is how the data gets skewered. I never forget a case in Atlanta. There was 2 white girls and a black man. They were robbing these banks, right? Robbing banks, like 40 going north. They called them the Barbie something or another robbers. Now, of course, you always get caught, or you do it until you get caught. That's the thing about robbing banks. So if you kind of got that as something you want to do, don't do it. You do it until you get knocked or get shot like I did. But that's a completely different story. Now, what happened in this case, though, the 2 white girls were robbing these banks. The black guy was, schooling them on what to do when they get in there. So they went in there, they did it, they smiled and handed off these notes and robbed these banks. But when they got caught, they made sure that they told on the black guy and said, hey, look, man, he's the one who showed us how to do this. So even though the black guy sat in the car and the white girls went in and committed these robberies, you know how the charges were done? The girls received theft charges. Theft charges, not federal bank robbery charges. Oh no, they got theft charges. And the black man, now he got the bank robbery charge and was sent to the feds. This is how the data gets skewered. It's not that blacks are running rampant and doing all kind of crazy stuff. The numbers are pretty much being fingered. The numbers are being fingered for the purpose of having a resulting number that can be broadcasted for propaganda purposes. Nothing more, nothing less. So the problem is the fact that our laws are really, really racist. A lot of people like to deny it, but at the same time, these same people who deny it, when we see certain cases with certain people committing these crimes and they walk out of the courtroom we do look at that and say, you know good and well that if that was me, or if that was one of us, we'd be under the jail. We do that because we know the truth. Blacks get treated differently by the law and by the enforcers of the law than any other race in this country. We do. You're not seeing a rash of unarmed white guys getting shot dead by cops. It's just not happening. It's not. It's just flat out not happening. It was discovered that in terms of drugs, the CIA was actually orchestrating the funneling of drugs into black neighborhoods. This was discovered when Rick Ross, the real Ricky Ross, decided that he wasn't going to put up with the whole situation anymore. And he exposed the fact that they had used him for the purpose of basically destroying black neighborhoods by funneling drugs into them. The CIA. So if they could do that, what do you think is going to happen when one of us stand up in court and talk about we're innocent or we're this and we're that? They ain't trying to hear us. They ain't trying to hear us. This system is set up against us. And I said that to say this. From being inside there and doing a significant amount of time, I understand that the system is set up against me. So I don't come out here and bang my chest and scream and yell and demand that they change this or change that as of yet. What I first do is avoid the poison. The poison is the way that the laws are set up. The poison is the drugs that get dumped into our communities. The poison is all the negative bullshit that seems to come our way but don't go anybody else's way. That's the poison. Police brutality, that's the poison. Laws that will give me more time than anybody else gets for committing the same crime, that's the poison. Well, now that I know that poison is there, I'm not going to eat it. Because I realize that since I know this, I now have the responsibility of letting my actions reflect the fact that I know this. I'd be a damn fool if I went out there and committed crimes with the knowledge that I have now. And then sat up after that and said, man, the stuff is bad. Basically eating the poison and then later on complaining about how it tastes. Once I already knew that it was there to begin with. No. So my advice to anybody, any black man, to you who may know somebody black, I know you do. You know what I'm saying? My advice to you, if you know somebody who's out there in the game, basically in the way, and not even realizing that they just in the way, let them know, man, that it's poison. It's poison. So don't get caught up, man, and then cry later. Because that poison is kind of nasty. And ain't nothing you can do about it once you eat it. The only thing I can tell you to tell them is the same thing that I tell people that I know, that I'm trying to, steer in a different direction. Since we know the poison is out there, since we know it exists, don't eat it.